All right, we are live. So welcome back to Dapp University. So we've got a lot to talk about in our live stream today. We're going to talk about a major social media giant who is launching their project live on Ethereum, okay, and why this is important. This is good for the Ethereum space. We're going to look at some updates for the Ethereum merge that are coming up very soon. I think my latest count, we're at 41 days till the Ethereum merge. There's a lot to cover here. We got some big, final deployments that are going to happen this week that are going to probably solidify that deadline or not. We're going to look at the developing story that we talked about yesterday, where Tornado Cash has been sanctioned by the US Treasury. You know, anybody who's interacting with this is potentially facing jail time. Okay, look at that. Check out the crypto markets and a whole lot more. So if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to master blockchain step by step, start to finish, then definitely head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. All right, so we got people jumping in the chat here. We got Technically, Cody, Jay Lee, Jorge. Let's see here. I can't read the characters on that one. Hexwood, Cryptology, Drakos, Mike. Welcome. All right, so let's jump in here. So we've been talking for a long time about this particular project. Well, it's been a while. I mentioned this when it first came out. Honestly, they were talking about this beginning in 2020. We've seen some developments over this over the past couple of years, but it is now official that Reddit is going to launch its community points program on Arbitrum Nova. Okay, so this is a big deal. So let's kind of set the stage for this and then connect the dots about why this is important. So Reddit is one of the biggest social platforms in the front page of the internet. It's a pretty big overlap between Reddit users and crypto users. And Reddit has been talking about this idea of community points for a long time, which is essentially a token for its platform. If you've been watching my videos talking about sort of blockchain trends and what you can do with it, social tokens are sort of an aspect of this, and how can you use tokens inside different applications. I'm not 100% sure about what that actually looks like and how that's useful in every case, but Reddit has gained some traction with this, with their community points feature. This is already a feature that's inside of Reddit, and they're essentially taking this to the next level, where you essentially can tokenize this with blockchain, with cryptocurrency, to where you could do things like withdraw it out of the application and then use it on, any whatever you want to inside of blockchain. So they've been working on this for a while, and it's been running on a test network, but we have an announcement that the community points are going to go live, and they're going to go live on Arbitrum Nova. Okay, so let's take a quick look at this. So Arbitrum, one of the leading Ethereum Layer 2 scaling platforms, has partnered with Reddit to bring its community point system onto a public blockchain, and this is key. So if you're not familiar with what Layer 2 scaling solutions are, people talk about all the time how Ethereum's too slow, it's too expensive to use, and a lot of people think you have to wait for Ethereum 2.0 to get here in order to fix that problem. Well, ETH 2.0 is not going to fix that problem, or the Ethereum merge, I should say, is not going to fix that problem. But that's exactly what Layer 2 scaling solutions are for, where you have this second layer that runs on top of Ethereum, where you can get this faster and cheaper transactions, but you still are paying the gas fees in Ether, okay? And you get the security of the Ethereum network in order to do that. So Arbitrum is one example of that, and Arbitrum has some different offerings like Arbitrum 1, which has been around for a while, and Arbitrum Nova, which is recently launched and in beta mode. So Arbitrum Nova is a separate network that's designed specifically for gaming and social applications that maintain security from Ethereum. And so Reddit is going to be one of the leaders who is helping pioneer this Arbitrum Nova effort, and is going to be able to run the community points on that. So basically, this is going to let developers build gaming, social, and other applications that will make use of the token. So that's the beauty of having a token that you can take out of an app like Reddit or a social network like Reddit, because you can do other stuff with it. If you can use community points to purchase something else, if they appreciate and value, you trade it for something else. You could buy an NFT potentially with Reddit's community points. So, the partnership will create collaboration opportunities for among Ethereum and Reddit communities. Reddit users give more ways to utilize their community points. The Ethereum blockchain I was talking about. So here's a quote from Arbitrum CEO. So one of the beautiful things about Reddit doing community points on Nova is that it's a public blockchain network where anyone else can launch points, right? Contracts and applications on. basically, when we're talking about, Reddit's sort of angle on this, saying like unlike other social platforms that need to entirely rehaul or risk being disrupted by new entrants, Reddit has been building this all along. That's what we've been talking about. They've been kind of on this. So anyways, this is a big deal for the Ethereum platform, okay? Because we're talking about Web3 social media, something I've discussed a lot in this channel, just scratching the surface on what you can do with this. And I've always said like, hey, we're gonna see one of two things. Either we're gonna have a grassroots Web3 social network spring up, which is kind of hard to do in the first place because it requires such a massive network effect, or you're gonna see existing social networks, expand into Web 3.0. And this is definitely one of the first major examples of that. And doing it with the community points is sort of the first way to dip its toes in that. So I don't think it's going to be the last thing we see this, using Web3 inside of a social network, but this is definitely a big leap forward. It's also a huge deal that we're seeing this roll out on the Ethereum ecosystem and actually on layer 2s, because talk about, if you've been watching this channel at all, or if you haven't, I'm huge on the Ethereum platform as being a leader in this space. Okay, definitely the best shot at being a global settlement layer for Web 3.0. And I've always said that, the future I'm betting on is layer 2 ecosystems really flourishing and taking off. And, this is definitely a step in the right direction and confirmation of that, and proof positive that that's where it looks like things are headed. Because in the day, like when you're talking about somebody as big as Reddit launching, effort like this, like they no doubt have surveyed all the available options and have chosen this specific option for a reason. And those reasons likely have to do with many of the reasons that I have talked about many times on my channel. And you can see some of those here. Basically, community points have been in development for almost 2 years. So I was saying before, the 3 main points Reddit emphasized they were looking for was decentralization, right, which is one of the biggest reasons I'm a proponent of the Ethereum platform. Developer friendliness, huge developer ecosystem on Ethereum, developer tooling, that's one of the reasons, and a broad ecosystem support other projects in the ecosystem. And boom, there you go. That's with Ethereum's network effect. So anyway, this is a huge deal. I'm excited for this to go live and actually, get my hands dirty with it and play around with it. And yeah, this is awesome. So we'll circle back to this here in a minute. Let's see if we got any questions in the chat. So it's good news for content creators. Yeah, totally. Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's jump into a couple other things. One is kind of following back up from what we talked about yesterday, with the sanctions that came down from the US Treasury. Okay, so yesterday I put out a video talking about how some crypto users might be at risk of going to jail if they don't watch out for this type of thing. So yesterday, let me just pull this right on my screen. So yesterday we saw the report that Tornado Cash, the application that essentially gives users a privacy benefit on top of Ethereum, was blacklisted and actually sanctioned by the US Treasury. And we kind of went through this yesterday, talking about how anybody who had used this type of thing from this point forward looks like is now at risk of some serious legal hot water. I'll put it that way. So anyways, Tornado Cash is a privacy solution, like I was saying before. Basically, one of the problems with blockchain now is all your transaction history is public. You can see everything you've ever done immutably on chain, or it's immutable activity. You can see it forever on chain. And so basically, there's different ways to solve that problem. But if you're going to stay on the blockchain itself, you can use a service like Tornado Cash, which essentially it's called a mixer, where you can like send all this different cryptocurrency to it from different accounts. And then if say 1,000 people are doing it or something like that, or 1,000 deposits from different addresses, then you go withdraw tokens on the other side, and you can't link it very easily to the other address. Now you could possibly link it, but it's hard to do. So anyways, the US Treasury came out against this yesterday, citing the fact that they've been used by hacker groups to try to conceal their activity and abscond with the funds, right? So I know there's lots of backlash from this in the crypto community. My advice for sure to a lot of people is, just be careful. Okay, definitely be careful with this type of thing. You don't want to play around with criminal charges. That sounds like what we're facing here if something like this is violated. So anyways, I do want to talk about some sort of second order consequences of this. Because yesterday we were talking about, hey, we don't know what this means. It means if if somebody sent you money from Tornado Cash and you ever interacted with it, are you going to be in hot water? How's that within your control? All this type of stuff. But one big thing that another consequence that people are seeing now is what's going on with stable coins. Okay, so USDC, okay, so pulling this up here on my screen. So USDC is a stable coin, which it looks like it is now blacklisted addresses associated with Tornado Cash. So we pulled this up on my screen yesterday. The US Treasury has a list of all the smart contract addresses that are associated with Tornado Cash that are now sanctioned addresses, I guess. And looks like those have been blacklisted by the stable coins. So I want to go through this and talk about some of the implications here. So yesterday, US Treasury designated for sanctions ETH addresses associated with Tornado Cash. As a result, Circle, together with Coinbase, restricted the movement of USDC funds to these sanctioned addresses. Okay, so basically, they're saying it's likely that nearly all responsible registered virtual asset service providers also took the steps to block the customers from transacting with these addresses or face charges of willfully avoiding U.S. sanctions compliance obligations, which can bring up to 30 years in prison. 30 years in prison. Oof. The regulatory intervention in this case crossed a major threshold in the history of the internet and the history of open blockchain finance, with a major government obliging parties to outright block or limit the functioning of open source software on the internet. It's pretty crazy. I think we also saw GitHub completely take down the code for Tornado Cash and even delete some of the developer accounts. So I haven't verified all the details of those types of things, but that looks like, if we take that at face value, then that's also pretty crazy. So it raises extraordinary questions about privacy and security on the internet and the future of public internet digital currency. We have noted the tension between privacy and security as policy matter. Yesterday, this stopped being an abstraction. Okay. So he's saying separately, he shared a blog post which outlines our actions and suggests some paths forward in our industry. In short, this is a critical moment for crypto industry to sharpen its focus on major policy issues tied to financial privacy. So I'll put a link to Jeremy's tweets in here. So that'll be the official sort of statements from USDC. But here's the thing, you have to understand. We have lots of services and dApps on the blockchain that have centralized, control over them. And that's the thing you have to understand is USDC is issued by Circle. Okay. And Circle actually has the ability to blacklist and restrict movement of coins to certain addresses. Okay. Now, it just is what it is, right? You have to know that if you're using USDC, that they can restrict the movement of your funds. So if you had tokens parked in Tornado Cash, you may not be able to get those out of there if you hold USDC. So I don't know exactly how they've implemented these completely, but just highlighting this conversation, because some people just think that everything in blockchain is completely decentralized, that there's no control over it or anything like that, but that's not necessarily true. USDC is a stablecoin, it's powered by smart contracts, and the smart contracts have functionality in it that allow essentially the controllers of it to do certain things, like restrict movement of your funds if they're going to or coming from a certain set of blacklisted addresses, that are sanctioned. So it's just an important thing to understand, okay? Because not all cryptocurrencies are created equally. Of course, a stablecoin, you also have to trust that the issuer itself has the ability to guarantee the value of your funds and actually keep the peg stable. Of course, we've seen some stablecoins not fare so well in the past few months, like Terra Luna. Of course, algorithmic stablecoin is a completely different thing, which I don't have a lot of faith in. The algorithmic stablecoins. I have not seen one work to date, and they've almost all ended really, really badly, or they actually have all ended really, really badly to my knowledge. So anyways, stablecoins themselves are not even created equally, but some stablecoins have centralized control over them, and you have to understand that, which in my opinion also gives it gives it also continues to highlight the value proposition of something like Ether. Okay. Because Ether is the native cryptocurrency of the Ethereum blockchain, and of course also like Bitcoin too. I mean, they're kind of have a similar value proposition in that case. Whereas of course they have volatility in the price. Okay, so you don't get the stability like you would a stablecoin, but you do get the censorship resistance that would be very, very, very hard to implement in a case like this, compared to a centralized stablecoin that has an issuer and a redeemer behind it. Okay, so there will be some people will say like, hey, well, we could just use a decentralized stablecoin like DAI, for example, where you can mint it with other cryptocurrencies. But the problem is now that DAI is multi-collateral DAI, it can be collateralized by multiple different cryptocurrencies, not just Ether. Like when DAI launched, it was just collateralized by Ether, and we still have that DAI technically. It's called Psi. But now we have DAI, which it gets this backing. Like how does a stablecoin work? You should be able to redeem the coins for other cryptocurrencies. And in this case, you have a lot of other cryptocurrency minting a much smaller amount of DAI, powered by smart contracts in a completely decentralized way. And the problem is there's multiple cryptocurrencies in there, and centralized stablecoins can be part of DAI's backing. So like USDC can be used to help collateralize all the assets, or they part of the collateral that helps mint DAI in the first place. So like the whole point here is USD, like DAI itself is not even necessarily safe because it can have a centralized point of failure by some of the assets that are locked in the DAI protocol in the first place. And who knows if some of those assets came like from Tornado Cash, right? Like you don't know, right? Like could that all be frozen inside of the DAI contract? You don't know, right? There could be some contagion risk here. Now, I'm not gonna get, I think that's honestly probably a little bit less of a risk, but just showing you like how this affects other things and how this brings highlights the value proposition of a currency like Ether or even Bitcoin in this case. Cryptos that have stood the test of time, that are very censorship resistant and hard to crack down on quite a bit like this. So a lot of these issuers are facing this, risk of, I don't blame, right? Nobody wants to go to prison for 30 years. We're seeing centralized exchanges follow the same type of thing. Now, the real question is, are we going to start seeing censorship at the wallet level or at the RPC provider level? So if we have, wallets like MetaMask that support connection to the blockchain, and we have, node providers like Infura or Alchemy, are we going to see those types of things actually have to implement censorship for, contracts like Tornado Cash, which have official U.S. sanctioned blacklist to avoid these, 30 years in prison? It's a tricky, challenging thing for the space to navigate. Now, there are ways around this, right? Like, you can run your own node, right? It's hard to do. You could essentially make transactions on your own behalf, especially if you're a developer, by using your own tools, right? You could self-host front ends. You could fork the MetaMask extension. You could run your own Chrome extension. You could write scripts, talk to the blockchain. I mean, you could still do all this stuff. It just gets a lot harder. And I'm not advocating for anybody to violate, U.S. laws here. I guess I'm saying is like, and the other thing is Tornado Cash is still going to live on. Like, it's got contracts on the blockchain; those can't be taken away. But of course, there's going to be quite a penalty for U.S. participants or anybody. The law is pretty wide sweeping. It's like if you're even in the U.S., even if you're not, a citizen, like you're still in violation, all this type of stuff. So we're still seeing all the details of this come out, but it's big deal. And of course, we're seeing pushback on this, from different different players in the political space, saying like, hey, this was kind of like just too much, too fast or uncharacteristic of other attempts at regulation, and these types of things need to be maybe amended in some way. But it's not the first we've seen this. Like we've not played very nicely with crypto, especially when we've seen like the infrastructure bill go through, that they just like jam in all this really vague language for crypto. And then some of that has to hopefully get walked back, right, with other politicians and regulators, essentially. So, we could see some revisions to this type of thing. But for now, you definitely want to be very, very careful. This is IPFS. Yeah, totally. So stuff can be hosted on IPFS. So let's look at a couple other things here. All right, so speaking of Ethereum and the Ethereum hold on a second. Speaking of Ethereum and Ethereum merge, we're officially 40 days. I think I said 41 earlier, but mostly rounding up. They're 40 days from the Ethereum merge. Yeah, I apologize to the spammers. Somebody's talking about that in the comments. So anyways, Ethereum is merging to proof of stake. All right, we're going to turn on the proof of stake consensus layer for Ethereum, merge the beacon chain and the chain that we're using now. Ethereum will become proof of stake, will become deflationary, assuming the network activity does not drop substantially, which I do not expect it to do. And we only have a few things left before that happens. Okay, so the biggest thing is the last testnet merge. Okay, which at my last count, I believe is going to happen in the next couple of days. I think it's in 2 days. All right, I got to go check on this 100%. But basically, you have because you're merging two live blockchains that have billions of dollars of cryptocurrency on them. You're putting them into one thing. You have to practice this multiple times before you do it. Okay, sort of like watching a rocket go off for real with actual humans inside of it. It's like you want to make sure this thing, goes off without any problems. It's kind of similar to that. Like you're swapping out the engine for an airplane while it's flying, and there's passengers on board. Okay, so there's passengers on board, and there's also like I don't know. I was trying to sweeten the analogy a little more, but that's the whole point. It's important. So we've had several merges practiced on other test networks already. Pretty much all been successful, or they have all been successful. The last one is the Goerli testnet. I always say that name kind of funny, but that's the last test network to happen. So I believe that's going to be the next couple days. Okay, and assuming that goes as planned, assuming that it goes well, no real issues, that should codify the official date, I think, all right, of September 19th, which will only be about 40 days away. Okay. So, again, you have to understand this 40 days number here is potentially subject to change if something happens. But we have officially heard the September 19th date come from the mouths of the core developers themselves. Okay. So usually whenever they start advertising a date, like it's a high degree of confidence that it's going to be that. That's like when we saw the beacon chain go live in 2020. essentially once, they had all the people guessing when the date was going to be, but whenever the date was actually officially announced, it was like, yeah, we're probably going to make that deadline. So Mike says in 2020, my private key will be able to brute force in 2 seconds. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, given the current cryptography standards, if quantum computing actually gets to the level, if quantum computing actually becomes stable by then, which I'm not 100% convinced it will be. But it probably stands to reason that, like, unless we end up completely nuking ourselves, like, to death before 2020, whatever encryption we have now is probably not going to work anymore. If somebody's trying to wonder what Mike is talking about, basically, you have like, what is crypto in cryptocurrency? So, blockchain, like, at the heart of how blockchains work is cryptography standards, basically. And so, digital signatures are a big part of that. So, like, public key cryptography, it's like your wallet address has a key pair, a public key and a private key. And essentially, you can deduce your public key from your private key. It's sort of like having a password that generates a username, and that public key, your address is a representation of that public key, right? And so, hashing algorithms are essential for how you deduce, key pairs. Now, key pairs aren't the only way that you use cryptography and blockchain, but it's just one big way, and it's applicable to what he's talking about. And so basically, public key cryptography basically lets you sign messages and have digital signatures, and the receiver of that message can verify cryptographically that you sent it. That's how we actually execute transactions on a blockchain. So if you go to MetaMask, click sign. Whenever you're doing a transaction, you confirm the transaction, you send it to the blockchain. The blockchain knows that you sent it because it was signed with your private key. That's how it knows to authorize a transaction on your behalf. So anyways, the whole point is we use certain encryption algorithms to do that, okay? And some of the big fears around wallets and crypto is that we're going to have powerful computers that can essentially brute force crack, the encryption on your wallet, okay, and potentially steal your funds or gain access to your private key. So one of the big fears of that is, like, quantum computing, okay? That quantum computers will be able to just, like, crack, wallets and steal all the money. We don't really have, like, the problem with that is we don't really have stable quantum computers that at least are commercially available, right? Like, we might have people with quantum computers, right? We might have intelligence agencies with quantum computers. You don't necessarily know for sure, right? Because if you had a quantum computer and, like, you could crack, nuclear codes, like, why would you try to take down all the blockchain wallets? Like, it doesn't make any sense to show your cards that you have that power. So there may be quantum computers out there, right, that can do that type of thing, but for sort of the bad run-of-the-mill actors who might just be hackers, they don't have access to them. We don't have access to them, and we have some pretty big setbacks in the viability of stability for quantum computers that probably is not going to get fixed anytime soon enough to crack blockchain wallets. And but even if we get to that point, right, like, we can just have quantum resistant cryptography, right? Like, if you can use quantum computers to crack blockchain wallets, like, why can't we just use quantum computers to also make new encryption models for blockchains? So that's the answer to that question right there. But he was saying basically by 2020, right, like, we're probably gonna have all of our wallets cracked. And that's probably true. Like, that's a long time away. Whatever encryption we have now, like, it's probably not gonna hold up. Can't wait for the quantum merge. That's right. Ethereum blockchain is going to bloat and eventually be useless and more centralized way of solutions and the only way to run the business. Well, are you familiar with the rest of the Ethereum roadmap? Like, are you familiar with like vertical trees and stuff like that? Like, there's definitely solutions to this problem on the Ethereum roadmap in the relatively near future. Okay, so we've got ways to essentially prune the state where people can not have to store the entire thing. So the point that you're making is not 100% valid. All right, everybody, that's all I got for today. As always, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. There are videos out so the more people can learn about blockchain. You know, if you're as fascinated with this technology as I am, if you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? You can go to my YouTube homepage. You can find my free courses there. They're like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those and you want to take the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master's shortcut entirely, I can show you how to master blockchain step-by-step start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. You have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. Until next time, thanks for watching.